I guess, welcome you back a little bit to New Orleans and then see what you can tell us about Zack. And for those of you that don't know, Jim was a longtime great player in the league for 10 years and is a fast-rising defensive coordinator and certainly a star in college football. And certainly will be a head coach here very, very soon. So his insight would be greatly appreciated.
All right. Where do you just want me to start? Kind of overview on Zack?
Yeah, if you would, please.
Okay. Yeah. Well, obviously at Wisconsin, we couldn't be more proud of the progress that Zack has made throughout his career. Just a tremendous amount of growth and maturity throughout his time. He's one of a handful of guys that I will say, throughout his college experience, he really checked all the boxes, as far as a guy who extremely talented when he walked in the door, get on the field early, have injuries, have to take a step away from football a little bit. Grew up a lot off the field from a maturity standpoint, and, had some things off the field that he had to deal with and push through. And then to see what he's done really the last 18 months, I'll say, kind of when his junior season ended, just the dedication that he poured in and kind of had that 18-month plan to get to yesterday. And really proud, the legacy that he left at Wisconsin. It's going to be talked about for a long time. So happy with what he's done and really excited for him. I think this organization is a great fit, having some knowledge of some of the people down there. Really excited for his opportunity to step in that locker room and try to affect ball games for you guys.
Hey Jim, one of the things Zack said was y'all lost a lot of production from your 18 team, and he kind of took it on himself to be one of the guys that filled that kind of gap. What did he kind of do specifically to make such a big leap from his junior to senior year?
I think when he was younger in his career, all the way through that junior year, he had some really strong leaders ahead of him in his position group and on defense, kind of as a team. We had some really strong leaders. So Zack was kind of able to just, know my role, do my role, speak more with actions than with words. And, he realized going into his senior year that dynamics changed a significant amount. And there was a lot of young guys that were looking at him and trying to learn from his experience and to learn, just from his play on the field. And he really took the challenge that we presented him to be that leader, vocally, in the locker room with the entire team, not just handling in your position group or the defense, but really crossing over and touching in the offensive side of the ball and really being a positive impact in that locker room. He accepted that challenge in a huge way for us. And that was probably number one as far as his growth. I think he really took that responsibility head on and realized that on and off the field, he had to be consistent and he had to be, a guy that everyone in that locker room could count on. And he did that the entire time. And I think that helped him gain confidence. I think that helped kind of free him up on the field to just, he learned who he really was and the capabilities that he had when he put himself out there like that. And, his senior season was dominant for us.
Coach Payton mentioned that, they see him as a guy that can play the Mike or the Sam linebacker spot. What about him have you seen that makes you think that that's a good spot for him or something that he can do in the next level?
I think his athleticism really jumps off the tape. Hopefully you guys see that speed, power, his ability to play in space. We asked him to play in space a lot, and we really challenged him over the last year to learn and we really exposed him to playing in the box. We had a pretty good idea that might be the next step for him, at least in some capacity of having to communicate on a down-to-down basis and play off the ball, play in the box. So we really challenged him this last year to increase his football IQ and really have to see the field, full field. and communicate to multiple layers of the defense. Not just the D line or other linebackers, but really have to reach back and communicate with the secondary as well. So that's one thing we've pushed him to do. So I feel very comfortable with him making that jump. But from a physical standpoint, you just see how he plays in space, how fluid his movements are, change of direction and burst. He's not going to have an issue jumping up to that level and being asked to do some of those things that maybe you haven't seen on tape as much, as far as playing in the box, playing that Sam or Mike position. We really challenged him this last year to learn all of that, and even within our scheme, we really exposed him to a lot of different techniques this past season. And not only did he become more productive, but it didn't slow him down. We asked a lot more out of him, down in and down out. And like I said, anytime you get a player that you can put that much more responsibility on them, and they seem to play faster, they got it. They've figured it out, and they feel comfortable with who they are and what the scheme is.
So was he a guy that was really attentive in the meeting rooms and the film sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. He's very fortunate in his time here. His position coaches have been really, really good. Tim Tibesar is defensive coordinator out at Oregon State, and then Bobby April has been a position coach in the NFL, inside and outside backer positions. So he's been coached extremely well, high level of detail in football, not just his job, but kind of the entire scheme. So he just eats it up. He loves one-on-one time. He thrives in that group setting as well, but he really wants extra. He wants more. So, you're going to need that in an off season that we're coming up against. It's going to be unique for these guys and how they have to prepare for their rookie years. And you need guys that are curious and willing to ask those questions and have a high understanding of football.
I think you mentioned.
Jim, if I remember correctly, you were a walk-on from a small school in Wisconsin, and I don't think he was a walk-on, but I think Zach was a gray shirt. And does that kind of foster a certain mentality in a guy when you start with those kind of humble beginnings and build yourself up into a prospect like you did?
Yeah, I think it definitely gives you a different perspective, and it is a chip that guys carry on their shoulder for a long time. He's extremely athletic, extremely talented. So when he got here, it wasn't a shock to anyone to see his ability and what he could do on the field. And for Zach, I think it was just kind of waiting his turn early, which is frustrating for a young player, especially when physically you're ready. So I think he sat back a lot in those meetings early and watched the success ahead of him, knowing that kind of when is my turn to flourish? When is my turn to jump out in the front of the pack? And he said he was patient. Not to say he wasn't frustrated at times, and especially dealing with some health issues. But obviously where he comes from and kind of the mentality he takes from his path through his college experience is definitely a big driving force of who he is. And he wants to be a great role model for the next group of guys.
Jim, have you had a chance to talk to him about playing in New Orleans at all and given him a perspective about that?
We've just texted back and forth a little bit. Just kind of hit him, knowing that organization. I have a great amount of respect, even though my time there was short. I have a lot of respect for Coach Payton and how he approaches his team, how he coaches, just his coaching style, his personality. So I have a lot of respect for what he does as a coach. And then just knowing a handful of the guys in that locker room with Drew and Cam Jordan and Malcolm Jenkins being back, like strong locker room. It was one of the best that I had been around. And, I'm assuming things have stayed the same. You don't have that type of leadership and lose the pulse of that locker room. And obviously they've been winning a lot of games. So I'm excited for him because, he's going into a situation where veterans on that team care. They're going to want to teach him the right way to do things and how to be a professional. And they're going to keep their eyes on him. So I'm excited for him because, schematically, I know a decent amount of what they do and how he will fit within that. So it truly is just an excitement as a coach, knowing that a guy's going into a great situation, and it's on him to make the most of that opportunity and just learn how to provide value in that locker room, provide value every time he steps on the field. And with what we know about Zack up here, we feel very confident that he's going to be able to do that and do that early.
Jim, you guys have had a couple defensive players recently make some really big impacts in the NFL. I know Zack was saying he got some pointers from like TJ Watt on like pass rushing stuff. How big of a resource is that for you guys, for guys like Zack to hear from guys who've had success at the next level?
I think it's huge. It just it gives them confidence going in because they've seen guys that have taken that same path as them and have success. They're not searching for examples that they don't know, right? For him, he was around those guys, Joe Schobert, who made the jump to the NFL and potentially a very similar way of playing all outside linebacker at the college level. And then, 2 years later was a Pro Bowler as an inside linebacker. You mentioned TJ Watt and Vince Biegel, another one where, they've seen these guys make the jump to the NFL and have success and really see how they've grown their games kind of within the last couple of years. There's enough tape of those guys out there where you're seeing the stuff that they were good at in college and how that translates and the things that maybe, they've added to their repertoire as a player once they got to the NFL, and having them as a resource, being able to reach out and kind of ask, what's this first off season like? What's the first season? Kind of all those different transitions that they're going to go through over the next 12 to 18 months, having those resources of guys that they sat in meetings with, they know how they were coached, and just to kind of take the gray out and make that transition easier. It's huge for guys like Zack.
Does anybody have anything else for Coach Leonard before we let him get on with his day?
That's all I have. I really appreciate it, Jim.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Joe.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Thank you.